Jenkyns.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I'm proud of our great country. We have always been innovative global leaders. In Britain, we have some excellent products, goods and services that the world wants to buy. Looking at individual countries, the US is the UK's largest trading partner. The UK exported 112 billion of goods and services to the US in 2016, which is 18% of our total. This was slightly less than double the value of exports to Germany, which is the UK's second largest export market at 57 billion. But it is the emerging economies where we are seeing the greatest growth. In 2017, the UK exported £22 billion of goods and services to China, making it the sixth largest export market for the UK. Trade with India has also increased, and India's share of UK imports has increased from 0.9% to now 1.7%. I hope to see this trade increase, and the British government should be doing all it can to ensure that we can take advantage of our historic links with the Commonwealth, and also with China and the USA. The PricewaterhouseCoopers report, The World in 2050, looked at how the global economy will likely change by 2050. Their key findings were that the world economy is due to double in size in just over 30 years, which is far outstripping the population growth. Emerging markets in the E7 are expected to grow around twice as fast as advanced developed nations of the G7. If this model is correct, 6 of the 7 largest economies in the world are projected to be emerging economies in 2050, led by China first, India second, and Indonesia fourth. Yes, happy to give way.
Mr Deputy Speaker, thank the Honourable for giving way. And in my constituency of Strangford, we have just secured a significant dairy milk product contract to China for over a 5-year period for £250 million, done very well by the International Development Minister himself, who initiated that along with the help of the local people. Does the Honourable Lady agree that China perhaps is one of those markets where we can do more for agri-food, but we can do more with the Pacific nations as well? Because there's a lot of trade in that area that we can build upon. Whenever we leave the EU, we can do even better. And I think that we should look towards the good times that will happen whenever we leave the EU come the 29th of March of next year.
I'd like to thank my honourable friend. We are clearly on the same page about the opportunities for the UK when we do finally leave the EU, and I go into this further with my speech. Right, the US will be down to 3rd place in the global GDP rankings, while the EU 27's share of world GDP could fall below 10%. The UK could be down to 10th place by 2050. France will be out of the top 10, according to this report, and Italy out of the top 20, as they are overtaken by faster-growing emerging economies like Mexico, Turkey and Vietnam. Mr Deputy Speaker, we are at a crossroads, not just for our country and Brexit, but a shift in global economic power from the west to the east. This can't be stopped, and it is right that a country with a population size of India has a higher GDP. This is good for tackling extreme poverty, and it has also been shown that it is only through capitalism and trade that these countries will grow. The UK, as an outward-looking trading nation, has a chance to forge strong links with the economic powerhouses of tomorrow. We need to get in there first. We need to take advantage of our position now. And we need to be able to sign free trade deals to fully maximise our opportunities. Yes, happy to give way.
Honourable for giving way, and congratulate her on securing this debate, and also say she's making an excellent, brilliant speech. And will she join me in paying tribute to a great British company called Rolls-Royce, which employs nearly 3,000 people in my constituency, but 22,000 across the UK. It's responsible for 2% of our exports as a nation, 12.2 billion contributions to our economy, which represents 0.7% of our GDP. Fantastic company, global outreach, ambitious and driving the way forward. And does she agree that companies like Rolls-Royce are going to lead the way in a post-Brexit Britain?
I'd like to thank the honourable gentleman for giving way, and it's probably the only time I'll ever give way to my husband. Thank you for your question. Yeah, and I agree. Rolls-Royce, fantastic company. Right. Right, I've lost where I am now. Yes, happily give way, yes.
She's making a good point about the trade deals with India and other countries, but would she not accept that there needs to be a re-look at how the Home Office treats visa applications as well, because there is a huge expectation in these countries that trade deals will also come with a bargain in terms of people being allowed to come and work and visit in the UK?
I'd like to thank the Honourable Lady for her question, and I agree. I mean, this is why, for one, I'm a Brexiteer, because I think, our immigration and visa system, it should be a level playing field, really, and so I'd agree. Right, so back to the speech. The UK, as an outward-looking trading nation, has a chance to forge strong links with the economic powerhouses of tomorrow. We need to get in there first, we need to take advantage of our position now, and we need to be able to sign free trade deals to fully maximise our opportunities. Brexit gives the UK an amazing opportunity to become, as the Prime Minister has said, a truly global Britain. However, I am sceptical that any agreement that we do sign with the EU that will not allow Britain to export its goods and services freely to the world. I was impressed with the Prime Minister's Lancaster House speech, and that vision for Britain was one that I know the country could get behind, and that I certainly got behind. The British people and I voted to leave and take back control of our future, and I'm disappointed for the 17.4 million people who voted to leave that this vision is currently only looking like a fantasy. As I said earlier, by 2050, the EU 27 share of GDP is likely to fall significantly. The EU is fundamentally protectionist in their economic outlook, whereas the UK and its people can see a future, and they can see a bright future. Protectionism is bad for growth and it's bad for trade. In a future where Italy is out of the top 20 and overtaken by countries that only a decade ago would have seemed unbelievable, we need to look further ahead than the EU's borders of Latvia or Romania.
Would the Honourable Lady give way?
Yes.
I'm very grateful to the Honourable Lady who's making a powerful speech, but don't we also need to look at ourselves as a country? Because the fact is the world's third biggest exporter is Germany. It's frankly more productive. We need to become more productive, invest more in the wherewithal to create the goods that the world wants to buy.
I thank my honourable friend for his question. This is why I'm a keen Brexiteer, and I'd like to see, rather than sending money across to the EU, I'd like to see it invested in our own industries, in research and development, so we can really have a bright future for this country. Happy to give way to the honourable gentleman.
I'm grateful, just to follow on that earlier intervention, there are two elements to point out about this. The first is that Germany has done significantly well, but a huge amount of that has been because their currency level at the moment is far lower than it would have been had they not been in the euro. But that has been to the extraordinary damage to countries that were massive exporters, such as Italy and others, who are now literally finding that they are impoverished by the very fact that so much of the Germans' production is now dumped into countries like Italy and others at their expense. And so we have to be very careful when we recognise what Germany has achieved, and there is much that is achieved. What we need to do is recognise that we have to invest more and make sure that we are more productive, and there are plenty of ways to do that. But we need to be very careful when we extol the virtues of what's been going on in Europe at the moment.
I'd like to thank my honourable friend for his strong contribution. You are second to none, my honourable friend, with your commitment and your passion for this. I'd like to thank you for all the work you've done for decades. Thank you. There is a near consensus among economists that free trade generates more wealth than any system that restricts cross-border exchange. And any great exporting businesses in my constituency want us to be able to trade freely around the world and not just with EU 27. Protectionism benefits producers over consumers. It favours big business over small. It hurts lower income more than higher income consumers. Trade barriers are simply taxes on consumers and businesses, and that impede the global division of labour and the creation of wealth. These are certainly not conservative values. I'm lucky enough to have some incredible SMEs and big companies in my constituency that are already exporting around the world, but they would like to see lower tariffs, free trade opportunities going further afield. Ties Planet exports to 190 countries around the world, and Associated Waste Management exports 170 tonnes of refuse-derived fuel around the world. Coca-Cola, the biggest soft drinks plant in Europe, is in my constituency, and they manufacture and distribute over 100 million cases of soft drinks a year and in my constituency, and I'm sure they would also like to see low tariffs with Europe, but also globally. The British people voted to take back control, and Brexit should now be supporting British exporters. Looking at the Commonwealth, 1/3 of the world's population currently live in the Commonwealth, and our close relationships and the respect that this wonderful organisation has for Britain could easily be tapped.
Not to give way, one small point.
Yes, certainly.
I just want to say that now she's talking about soft drinks, given that the Scottish Nationalist is on the bench opposite, can I ask her also to recognise that Scotch whisky exported to places like India that charge huge tariffs on it. One of the great benefits of that soft drink would be that it could be exported much more, and many of us who enjoy that soft drink in the evening occasionally would actually see that we've done a huge amount of good for the businesses even in Scotland.
Thank you to my honourable friend, and as somebody who gets tipsy on one glass of wine, I certainly leave the whisky drinking to yourself and my husband.
Oh.
Right, Britain's entry into the European Economic Community, the EEC, in 1973, and the EEC's evolution into the European Union has meant that it's been impossible for the UK to independently enter into negotiations with Commonwealth states to establish free trade agreements. However, after the decision on the 23rd of June 2016 by Britain to leave the EU, and as the Article 50 of the EU's Lisbon Treaty has been invoked, Britain may be able to negotiate its own trade deals.
Would my honourable friend give way?
Yes, certainly.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way. Does she agree with me that the direction of travel across the world in terms of trade has been to bring down the barriers? And actually, when we joined in 1973, the barriers were much more substantial, and the European Union ought to seek an opportunity to maintain the zero barriers that we have at the moment post-Brexit.
I thank my honourable friend, another committed Brexiteer and another committed visionary for our country. So thank you, honourable friend. Right, in the Commonwealth, English is usually spoken as a first or second language. Our common law system had been inherited by many Commonwealth countries, and foreign countries encourage their people to study law in Britain. Even accounting principles and practices are usually similar to our own here in the UK. In 2016, UK exports of goods and services to the Commonwealth were £48.5 billion, which is only 8.9% of all UK exports. We have neglected this vital resource for far too long as a country, and we as a nation and the government should be doing more to actively encourage exports to these exciting economies. There have been some good news stories from the Commonwealth in recent years. Looking to my region, the number of exporters of goods in Yorkshire and the Humber sending products to Nigeria went up by 8.2%. Exports to India has increased by 4.3%, and to Australia it's increased by 1.8%. In contrast, the number of exporters to France has barely moved at 0.2%, and Italy fell by minus 0.4%, despite the drop in the pound. In contrast, since the Canadian Free Trade Deal with the EU, our exporters to Canada have increased by 9.9% when compared with the last year. This illustrates that benefits that the new free trade agreements can have on our great exporters in Yorkshire and the Humber. I, like them, want to see more people exporting around the globe, and government plays a large part in this ambition. The government's industrial strategy is one that I fully agree with. We need to back business, we need to invest in skills and industries and infrastructure to ensure that we are ready for the 21st century. We need to see a geographically balanced economy. We need to encourage the UK to be the world's most innovative economy. We need to see greater earning power for all. We need continued investment and strong business environment, guaranteeing the UK is the best place in the world to start and grow a business. As the Minister will confirm, research shows that companies that export have increased growth potential, are far more productive and have better paid jobs. Last year, £620 billion worth of goods and services exported by British companies accounted for 30% of our GDP, and UK exports are at a record high. Yes, certainly.
I thank you for giving way. I listened to your speech here, and the obvious thing I'm worried about Brexit is, what if Britain becomes isolated from the rest of the world? What if Europe can do it cheaper? Where does all this export go? Because that's my biggest fear is about Brexit.
I thank the honourable gentleman for his question, but I, unlike him, have got great belief in the British people and our businesses, and I know and trust that we will continue to thrive and grow, and no doubt we will far outdo the way the Europeans, the EU, will be performing. We will be doing far better than that. So mark my words with that. I will put that on the record. Right, so however, the Department for International Trade estimates that 400,000 businesses believe they could export, but don't, while demand for British expertise and goods overseas is only growing. I was pleased to see the Secretary of State for International Trade has recently set out some ambitious plans to make Britain a 21st century exporting powerhouse. This new export strategy aims to increase UK total exports as a proportion of GDP to 35%. We want to see SMEs grow into multinational corporations of tomorrow, and support from government can help, and it will help. And I'm glad to see that this government is responding to a call from business. The export strategy outlines how the government will produce smarter and more tailored support to UK companies. More support for companies selling overseas will be offered, encouraging and inspiring more businesses to export. The government will assist businesses by providing information, advice and practical assistance on exporting, and connect UK businesses to overseas buyers and markets and to each other. This policy sounds fantastic, and I'm sure every honourable member in this room could get behind it, and it is one that I certainly could get behind. However, we need to address the elephant in the room. Free trade agreements, albeit the restriction that the Prime Minister's draft withdrawal agreement put on our ability to be free and independent when we finally leave the EU. Martin Howe QC has analysed the Prime Minister's draft agreement and has come to this conclusion. The customs union arrangement would kill stone dead the chances of the UK following an independent trade policy after Brexit. We would not be able to offer tariff concessions to free trade partners, so they would have no incentive to offer us concessions on say, services, which we would want to export to them. Further, it will render the theoretical right to negotiate third country trade agreements during the transition period totally meaningless, since we will be unable to tell prospective free trade partners when we will be free to implement such an agreement, or indeed whether we will be ever free to implement such an agreement at all. They will have no interest in spending time and effort on serious negotiations with us. It's a lose-lose situation for the UK and our future. I repeat, he says it would kill stone dead the chances of the UK following an independent trade policy after Brexit. This is directly at odds with the Prime Minister's Lancaster House speech when she said, "I want us to be a truly global Britain, the best friend and neighbour to our European partners, but a country that reaches beyond the borders of Europe too, a country that goes out to the world to build relationships with old friends and new allies alike. I want Britain to be what we have the potential, the talent and the ambition to be. A great global trading nation that is respected around the world and strong, confident and united at home." The Prime Minister's draft agreement does not live up to her promises, and I will not be supporting any agreement which does not allow the UK to take back control to export our goods freely around the globe. Only today, Global Britain and the European Research Group issued a joint publication exploding the myths of leaving the customs union. The foreword by Simon Boyd, Managing Director of Reed Steel, has rubbish concerns that when the UK leaves the EU single market and customs union, that it will be harder to trade. Whether that's imports or export, his biggest criticism of the EU is the bureaucratic nature of the customs union, which is designed as a fortress to protect producers rather than encourage free trade. Furthermore, he criticised the EU system that suits multinationals who have the means to lobby and unfairly profit at the vast expense of the majority of UK businesses. We need to get as far away from this protectionist club as possible, and that means we should leave the customs union to support British SMEs and exporters here at home. I'm a Conservative and we believe in a liberalised trade, but also we believe in the determination and talent of the British people and British business. We believe in the benefits of government that supports business and allows it to prosper. 200 years ago, Adam Smith argued in favour of free trade and against protectionism. The argument is as relevant and persuasive today as it was back then. Those arguing against free trade and for protectionism are arguing in favour of higher prices and fewer choices for the consumer, and therefore against a higher standard of living for the British public. I cannot support this, and we need to be free of the EU's protectionist bloc once and for all.
Yeah.
Mr Deputy Speaker, in conclusion, across my constituency, across Yorkshire and the Humber, and across the UK, we have some excellent exporters. These are businesses that we should be proud of, and I am glad that this government and the Secretary of State is working with businesses to support their needs and to exports and keep exports high on the department's agenda. However, this government's draft agreement to keep the United Kingdom in the customs union with the EU will not help exporters in the medium to long term. Every day that we stay in the EU is another day when we aren't able to take advantage of this historic ties with the world's most exciting and fastest growing economies. Fears about us leaving the customs union have been greatly exaggerated. What Brexit offers is the opportunity to reduce red tape, to look beyond the bureaucratic nature of the customs union and to establish our own free trade agreements with the rest of the world. Adam Smith may be about to be replaced on the £20 note, but that does not mean we should forget his teachings regarding the importance of free markets. To echo the Prime Minister's words, I want to see a truly global Britain. But we need to be out of the customs union to ensure that this happens. It is only when we are truly free and we have control of our laws, our money and our borders that Britain will be able to fulfil its destiny as a 21st century exporting powerhouse that the Secretary of State himself wants the country to be. Thank you.
Minister.